Three, two, one, here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian the Rain Man Lucas. Welcome to Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. We're going to take a deeper dive into topics of interest to me, including politics, current events, history, popular culture, and social issues. You'll find the diversity of topics refreshing. In our clickbait, soundbite society, we rarely get the whole story. Rain Man's Take interviews interesting people as well as peeling back the onion on specific topics, all with the goal of getting people to think more deeply about a subject. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man. I want to introduce my guest today, Kevin Russell. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing great, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm so stoked we're able to reconnect.
Absolutely. So Kevin and I have known each other for quite a while. I was first introduced to Kevin through his wife. This was several years back when she was a yoga instructor. And I used to take her classes, and Kevin every once in a while would show up, and we all just kind of got along and just became very good friends. And just as life would have it, they've got a daughter that's growing up, and kind of life gets in the way. And next thing you know, 4 or 5 years go by, and I'm just looking at the local newspaper here in Encinitas, and sure enough, in the newspaper they've got an article about Kevin Russell, who had just written a book. So I immediately said, this is a perfect opportunity to reconnect, get him on the podcast and talk about the book. So Kevin wrote a book called Radical Enlightenment, My Guy on the Ninth Floor. And he also takes on clients as an energy change agent. And we're going to get into all that, I'm sure, today. So Kevin, why don't we do this? Why don't we start, kind of give a little bit about your background, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're going long tail all the way back, pretty much as quote unquote normal, as a kind of middle class, upper middle class upbringing as you could imagine. My dad was a lifer with Motorola. He worked there for 35 years. We bounced around a little bit with his career. Did the path, high school, college, post-college. Worked in restaurants for a number of years, probably 15, 20 years during school, and then after school, into the time when our daughter was born, just making sure that making it happen, so to speak, all the while pursuing a career in design. And that was always my passion. And I was in design for about 20 years, had my own agency with a partner for 10 of those. And the last 4, I've been doing consulting contract work. So freelancing for the most part, but really had a great stable of clients, was making my own hours, was working on projects I wanted to work on and that I was really drawn to, surfing when I wanted, vacations when I wanted. Everything was, I was living in my opinion, what would be you could call a fulfilled or fulfilling life. And all along the way, I had this underlying thread, and it really accelerated the last 3 or 4 years. And it was really Kelly, my wife Kelly, and I's relationship, which was the linchpin for this. And we wouldn't say fighting, but we would emphatically discuss, or we would, we're just arguing semantics. We're not really fighting. We were really fighting.
Right.
And it started to come out in our daughter. And she started to pick any scab or any blemish she had, to the point where it looked like she had chicken pox. So we're like, what's going on? And took her to a doctor, a Western MD, general practitioner, who also happened, on the recommendation from a friend, who also happened to practice kinesiology or muscle testing as a component of his practice, to see if what the client or the patient was saying actually resonates with their internal systems.
Right.
That was really about 4 or 5 years ago was the first introduction to that. Turns out within 7 minutes of meeting with the doctor that everything with her was completely fine. It was the interaction between my wife and I that was causing the anxiety and the distress and the dis-ease in our daughter, which really blew the lid off everything. And he said, okay, and she was good to go after she identified exactly what it was. So he said, okay, sweetie, can you wait in the living room, or in the waiting room? I need to talk to your mom. So that's when Kelly and I jumped in both barrels with energy work, with looking at really what's going on in our subconscious systems,
right,
as opposed to dancing with that monkey mind, or looking for instances of, oh, I'm right, or I'm justified, or I'm validated. And it healed us individually. It not healed it. it expanded us individually. It cleaned out a lot of the programmatic conditional junk that every single one of us has, which allowed us to reconnect more truly and honestly and wholly with ourselves, and then by product with each other as well. That was really the soup to nuts.
No, that's great. Would you say that growing up, were you did you kind of have that maybe subconsciously where you kind of tapped into that kind of, for lack of a better way to describe it, kind of the spiritual side of things, or was that sort of the catalyst 4 years ago?
Yeah, along the way, I think I was one of those that I would say I was spiritual but not religious.
Yeah.
Raised Irish Catholic, and so had those influences and those factors growing up, and it was all fine. I went to religious studies for 16 years or probably 12 years, but it never was really the whole picture for me. A question that I always had growing up was yes and.
Yeah.
With religion, with theology, with philosophy, with science. So it's like, yes, and what I've come to is everybody has been trying to explain or identify the exact same thing through different lenses or through different paths. Science is all talking about energy. Religion is really all talking about energy. Theology, how we live our lives, either stoicism or ways to be, or these, classical, both Eastern and Western traditions, ways of expressing ourselves and living life, they've always been there. But it was more of internal awareness for me. So that first one was, okay, my experience with formal church wasn't doing it for me. And then I started surfing when I was 12 or 13, and that was a huge, like, this is like being in the ocean and surf. This is God. This is connecting and communing with whatever concept we have for things that are greater than us. And so I had that thought, and I always felt like my church or my cathedral was nature. I always felt so much more connected, either in a forest or in the water, or camping in the desert in Baja for a week or two surfing. And so little tidbits along the way. And then I got into philosophy when I was at university, at college, and that expanded the awareness. Read the Bhagavad Gita, kind of, there's the Hare Krishnas handing them out on the quad and stuff like that. I picked it up. I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
So just open and saying yes, like, yeah, I don't have the answers, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
From all sides. And that was really kind of the openness, I think, was part of it. And then just onboarding. I was always fascinated with quantum science and unified field theory. And these more kind of, they've been around for 150 years, but more cutting edge approaches to not only science and who we are, where we are, our place on the planet, our place within each other, our place in the universe, but also how these things, we're noticing, we're observing quantum fluctuations, we're observing particle and atom accelerators, but we're not applying any of those things to us, which is, to me, the big bridge of if we're observing it, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And we are energetic beings. We can feel a good vibration in a room where there's a surprise party, or we can feel the tension and the static in the air if we enter a room after a fight. That's energy. We're picking up on energy. And so those were kind of the stepping stones, I guess. And then I started clearing out doing the really intensive work on myself for about 4 years, accelerated all of that. And then it all culminated in this experience I had last fall, which was really the jumping off point for the book.
Yeah, which was basically a couple days from now, November 21st, 2000.
Yeah, coming up on the year anniversary.
So,
yeah.
So let's go ahead and dive right in. So this is the genesis of the book, Radical Enlightenment. And before he gets going, if at any time you guys are interested in learning more about Kevin and what he's doing, it's radicalenlightenment.com. So go for it, brother. Tell me about the book.
All right. So it started with that 4-year journey, like I said, and so much of my person, every single person, first of all, has certain states of conditioning and programming that we onboard just as a byproduct of being alive. We're born whole and complete, and then we enter the world, and it's like we all get zapped with that Men in Black forgetter thing.
Yeah. It's
the second we have an experience where we're in a heightened state of dis-ease. It could be parents fighting. It could be getting forgotten at the airport when you're little. It could be you got left in the car. Whatever it is, our systems record absolutely everything. And we don't know it because our subconscious is so much more powerful than our conscious mind. Some estimates put the processing capacity from our subconscious mind body at about 20 million bits per second, and our conscious mind is operating at about 40 bits per second. That's our critical thinking, our interpersonal communication, creative processes, things like that, where we're engaged and we're in the flow or we're aware. And so my personal expression was, I called it bubble gut, but it was basically, it's irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut. There's all kinds of terms and labels for it now. So I had felt this state of dis-ease and also tightness in my chest, felt these states for almost my entire life. When I was in this process of getting rid of all this stuff through muscle testing and through energy change processes and subconscious change processes, I started to have relief from these symptoms. And I think I was 37, 38, and I had this big expansive experience, and I realized I'd been holding my breath to some degree for about 25 years of just shallow breathing.
Yeah.
So that was a big eye opener. I also got into ancestral energy on this self kind of healing, self reconnection journey, where for whatever reason, tons of ancestral energy on both sides of my family line were just bottlenecking and just waiting for some kind of awareness or connection at some point, which ended up being me. But in retrospect, my mom's always had very bad, very severe food allergies, my grandmother. So there's been these states of physical dis-ease, which is just another form of energetic expression. And I had them as well. And as I'm doing this work over the last 4 years, they're dissipating. They're not, some slowly kind of melting away, some just disappearing like that.
Yeah.
So I get to this point in my own process last October, and I felt like I was a toddler in a dark room, feeling my way around. Like, I know there's something more. I just don't have I don't have purview to it. I don't have access to it. So on recommendation from Kelly and one of our friends who had seen this practitioner in Carlsbad, California, I went to go see a biofield harmonics energy worker, energy facilitator. Never heard of it before. But again, I'm open, so no preconceived notions. I'm just saying, yeah, let's go. Let's see what we can do. Meet with the practitioner, and she and I have a conversation for about 30 minutes. What are your goals? Why are you here? What are you looking to achieve? And I was like, I don't know, but there's something right just out of my reach, out of my touch.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out what that is. I'm just on this reconnection journey. So it's a no touch, no talk energy session. And I'm laying on a foldable massage table, a blackout mask on my eyes. And so she's like, okay, yeah, well, just lay on the table and we'll get started. So I can't see what's going on. She's not, I don't hear anything out of the practitioner, and they're, like I said, no touch. So I'm laying there, and it's pleasant. It's very, very relaxing and centering. And then
would you almost call it like, were you almost hypnotized, or kind of just being in the present moment?
Yeah, if you've ever done like Wim Hof is a vigorous diaphragmatic breathing exercise.
I do him every day. I've done it for the last year and a half. Love it.
So it was kind of like a post Wim Hof feeling, where it's centered, present. I here, be here now type of mental space. And so I'll be a blackout mask on. My eyes are closed. I can't see anything. And all of a sudden I start getting these scenes in my mind's eye. And the first one was like a Pacific Northwest deciduous rainforest, and just kind of on a trail. One of my friends said, when you're in Washington, it's like breathing green. And that's kind of what it felt like. It was like you almost breathe in that moist, rich air, and that's what it felt like. And then the scene shifted to like a low flying drone shot over surf. And I've surfed since I was 12 or 13, so that was very indelible for me. And then the shot dove underwater, and I've always loved skin diving, snorkeling, being underwater, being submerged. And so that was very peaceful for me as well. And then it shifted to a memory / home movie I've seen of myself playing soccer with a friend outside of my parents' house when I was like 5. I'm like, okay, I'm going on a memory journey. Okay, this is nice.
And this is not, there's no prodding from the practitioner. It's you just kind of, wow, okay.
Just me, and she's holding the space, and she's cultivating or facilitating the environment. But again, other than that initial consult, no interaction between us.
Gotcha.
So these familiar scenes fade out. And then all of a sudden, it was like a supernova went off in my mind. And I'm squinting my eyes behind this blackout mask because it's so bright, literally in my head. And that's when it got like kind of like shaky and tense.
Yeah.
And I started like cry laughing or laugh crying because I didn't have the physical capacity to hold the energy that I was feeling. So I had to let it out somehow.
Right. Right.
And then it's just wave after wave after wave of like the most pure, it was like mainlining love, compassion, empathy, just like for myself, for everyone else in the world, for the world, for the universe, just the most intense love I've ever felt in my life. And it was, I'm just kind of sitting, like laying on the table, eyes closed, blackout mask on, kind of shaking because I'm cry laughing. Again, she hasn't said a word. And then it settles down and it calms. And then the voice in my head changed. Just a fraction of a degree. I didn't realize this until afterwards when I was doing a little bit of research, but I didn't realize not everyone has a voice in their head. I don't know if it's a biological component, if it's where we are within our own consciousness journey element. And mine has always sounded like my voice. If I'm reading a book and I'm reading the words, I hear the words for most part in my voice in my head.
Yeah.
And so it was still my voice, but it was almost like a long lost twin I never knew about, but kind of always knew was there. And what I heard in my head was, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you've made it. We're going to have so much fun together.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that's new and different.
Yeah.
In a sea of new and different. And so then everything kind of settled and subsided and it felt good. And then it felt like it was winding down, kind of almost like at the end of a roller coaster where you're coming back into the station, so to speak. And so we have a post-session debrief, basically, because she doesn't know what I've experienced. I have no idea what she's got going on. So I tell her what was going on, everything I saw, and told her the whole story. And she's like, okay, so what I'm getting is you just connected to your higher self. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks because of the way I'm feeling. Like it was a knowing, like, yep, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And the subtitle or the second part of the book, My Guy on the Ninth Floor, came from this session because she said, okay, we're in a cosmic hotel. It's like you're on the elevator going between the third to the fifth floor, and your guy on the ninth floor is like, hey, buddy, up here, this is where the action is.
Yeah.
And so that was the impetus behind that, because the book really is a handbook to fulfillment, a handbook to living a fulfilled life, a handbook to guiding individuals towards their own connection, which is going to be hyper specific and hyper individual.
Yeah.
So that's why My Guy on the Ninth Floor, it's hyper specific to me, but the concept is universal. The idea of that kind of energetic concierge, almost connecting, we're strengthening our connection to source, God, spirit, whatever the comfortable or preferred label is. And so then she said, gave me some more information, some other things she got. And she said, what I'm getting is what you're here to do is create a new human design. And I was kind of puzzled, but then the first thing that popped in my head was a book.
Yeah.
And I know human design as a concept has already existed, but what the book is a refinement or a tweaking of our interaction with energy, our mastering or wielding of energy, and really diving deep into our internal space in order to live a more fulfilled, more peaceful, more centered life externally.
Yeah.
And so that all happened in the session. This was like I had been doing nothing but Wim Hof breathing for a month.
Yeah.
Like he's got a great quote. He was asked about cannabis use, and he said, Wim Hof, and he said, well, if you want to, go ahead, but why don't you just get high on your own supply? That's exactly how I felt. It was walking on sunshine, driving home, went straight to my wife Kelly's office, and I told her exactly what happened. I'm like, I don't think I can do design anymore. This is what I have to do.
Yeah.
Like it's not even really a choice. This is a compelling, a divine intervention, whatever the comfortable label is. I got tapped. It said, all right, off the bench, get in the game.
Yeah.
And so then there was a couple fits and starts in the next week or so. And obviously, we had family in town for Thanksgiving. So I'm like, how am I going to relate to people now? And then the book started coming to me and finished coming to me in the first 2.5 weeks in December. And so I was writing like 16 hours a day,
Really?
pure flow state, pure stream of consciousness, universal download, divine inspiration, whatever the comfortable label is.
Yeah.
So exclusive of the personal stories and the anecdotes that are interjected throughout, the actual handbook portion I wrote in 2.5 weeks. And then in my mind, I was like, cool, my job's done. Where are the massive book sales? Where is everybody beating down the door to get to this wonderful new, contribution to humanity and consciousness? And it was crickets. And I'm like, wait a second, this isn't part of the plan.
Yeah.
So then I jumped right, dove back into the human expressions of, okay, you've done the thing, now you have to share it, and you have to get, you have to get it published, you have to get, everything around publishing a book. So that was really the lion's share of the year up until August, was working with editors, doing about 2 months in studio for the audiobook recording, refine, get it to a point, actually ended up getting a publishing offer and working with an agent, and then walking away from both because the contract wasn't, I didn't feel 100% comfortable, and I was just more listening to intuition. Yeah. Which is really a wonderful byproduct of any energy work, is cultivating more inner knowing and moving from thought to feeling to that knowing. And it's a process and it's a practice. And so, yeah, it's been a wild ride, but that was really that everything leading up to that was kind of like the roller coaster, like clacking to the top of that first drop. Yeah. And then it's just been a wild roller coaster ride the rest of the year.
Damn, dude, that's crazy. So let's get the practical question out of the way, and then we'll get into our heads here. So I've had a couple of my very good friends have written books, and I've interviewed several of them, and they've all had to do, or not had to, but chose to do the self-publishing and all that through Amazon. And it seems like in today's world, there is enough options like that where you can actually do that. You don't have to go through, the traditional publishing. But to a person, they all said, because I'm actually fascinated, because like I said earlier, I thought about doing this last year, but it never really took off until now. I've also actually had a couple ideas about a book, but that intimidates the bejesus out of me. And to a person, each one of those guys said, I set up I was up at 5 a.m. and I'd write for an hour every single day. Mm-hmm. But you just had a fire hose for 2 weeks. So, I mean, is that exhausting, or how do you feel at the end of the day?
It was one of the most energizing periods I've ever experienced. It was, I mean, to the point where I wasn't like Kelly was like handing me food because I was so in the flow. Really? I wasn't even hungry. Yeah. And it was, and there came times. So I started off just like, I would get one, I got the title, and then I would get the section or the theme headers, and then things started filtering in from there. And I started off just writing in a line notebook, like a Moleskine. Yeah. And then I moved to typing because it was coming too fast for me to write. And then I actually moved to voice record because it was coming too fast for me to even type. And so, and a big catalyst for me was actually taking Epsom salt baths. I hadn't taken a bath since I was 5 years old. I'm like, I take showers, but I don't need a bath. And the day after the experience last November 21st, was probably the worst hangover I've ever had. But I hadn't had a lick to drink that whole week. And it was just body aches, base of my neck pain, just completely cotton-headed, foggy, couldn't keep a train of thought, lethargic, just listless, and just staring at my computer, not getting any work done. I still had a full plate of design work at the time. And Kelly came home from at the end of the day, and she said, you need to take an Epsom salt bath, because she had had a session with the practitioner before I did, and that was a recommendation. So I was with resistance, I said, okay, fine. And then so the Epsom salt bath synced everything right back up. It was like E.T. coming back to life at the end of E.T. Where it's like, whoop, like, oh, okay, there it is. Exactly how I felt the day before. And so there were a couple of fits and starts like that, but I was so energized and so in the flow and so focused. It was just, it was a never ending well of energy and inspiration. And I was just going with it until it was done. And it ended up being about 2.5, 3 weeks to where I started to go and start revising or refining things.
Yeah. Once it's all out there,
Yeah.
then now the actual grammar.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I still have the first draft. There are so many exclamation points and so many all caps paragraphs.
Yeah.
Because literally that's how I was getting it. I was getting it with like these shouts and this excitement and just, this is the path, this is the way. And again, not the way, it's a way. There's so many different paths and ways, and there's so many different modalities of internal change and meditation and awareness. This is just one that made sense to me because for me, it started off with the science. It started with the energy science and the quantum theory and looking at the different dimensions of energy and different dimensions that we experience, both three-dimensionally, which is our external world and our bodies and our senses.
Or as you would say, this crude carbon-based life form.
Yeah, our biomachine.
Yeah.
Except, oh my gosh, it's so beyond crude. We come pre-baked off the shelf with heightened intuition, precognition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, the ability to cultivate practices like telekinesis. Like all of these things are, it's the base model.
Yeah.
But we get so conditioned by our external world that and we're never really taught it because it's, it's still on the fringes and it's
taboo.
Right.
Yeah.
That, it's really, that was one of the realizations. Like every single one of us has all of these capacities or functions that are right there for us.
Yeah.
We just need to open ourselves up and take that step to awareness, increasing that consciousness, increasing that inner observer of our thoughts, of our space, of our world, and creating the space for those things to be able to be connected with. Yeah.
Yeah. And, as I'm talking to you, and I told you in pre-production that my next door neighbor, very good friend of ours, is in the process of shaman training, and he's been doing it for years. And it's all, like you said, it's all going at the same issue from just different directions. Just how the energy interacts with the energy of the universe. And I actually forgot what I was going to ask you just now, but I'm going to ask you to talk about this one part of the I was reading on the website here, like you were just talking about, and that the idea that we come off the shelf brand new, and that's the pure, and then you get all the layers of bullshit. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you or comment on. Yeah. It's like the scene in The Matrix, where you realize, and what I wanted to say was, people, when they finally have this sort of epiphany, or maybe after training with you, it shouldn't be that they should be angry or pissed off at the world for doing this to them. That's just sort of what happens. And it's up to you as a sovereign, enlightened individual to try to work your way out of it. And it's not to say that once you do that, that you are completely disconnected from the world. Like you said earlier, when this happened, you're like, how do I interact with my family now?
Yeah.
You still can. It's just the fact, just understanding that all of these things in our worlds at some form are putting you or trying to put you into an established lane. And whether you want to call that control, if you're into conspiracies or what, you don't necessarily have to. I mean, yes, obviously there are certain things that you have to do as a civilization, but the fact that once you become aware that those things are there to kind of keep you in a box,
right?
Once you realize that you can actually be out of the box, I mean, that's amazing. So talk to me about your daughter, that instance where Kelly and your daughter were in the kitchen, and she's brand new. She's, like you said, she's essentially just out of the box.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because that blew my mind reading that.
Yeah, she's about 1.5 years old. And we had one of those like McCormick spice racks where the green lids and the wooden rack thing. And it had gotten dusty, and there was next to the stove, so it gotten splatters and stuff. So my wife's wiping them down and putting them back. And the 1.5-year-old is helping. So she, she's holding them and shaking them and stuff like that. And my wife takes out, I think it was
Ginger.
turmeric and, okay, ginger and thyme, thank you. And just out of the blue, my daughter just pointed and she said, that's good for ears. And they're just talking back and forth. My wife's like, no, that's, that we use that to season food. I think that one was thyme. And then, or no, that was ginger. And then a couple jars later, she points to another one, says that one's good for eyes. I think that was the thyme.
Yeah.
And so my wife, it stuck with Kelly. And so she looked the next week, just looking up, traditional herbal remedies for earaches and eye pain and stuff like that. And both of those were at the top of like 15 different lists that, just I mean, it was a Google search, but
yeah,
there are these holistic and natural practices that are generational. And this is, so, and here's, we're going to get into the meat of it pretty quickly. So where did she get this information? How did this 1.5-year-old have this understanding or awareness that these two specific herbs were good for eyes and good for ears? And then another experience that I had kind of with this same type of energy or connection, there's another story in the book about a flight I was on when I was 5 or 6 maybe. And there was a game or a quiz, and the flight attendant came on and said, all right, whoever gets this question right is going to win a bottle of champagne. And the question was, what was the longest distance of the Wright brothers' first flights? And so my daughter knew absolutely, and I had the same thing where I heard the question and I let it sit with me, and then I literally saw the numbers in my mind. I think it was like 853 feet or something like that. And so both of these experiences, having there was no training. It's not like I was studying first flight or Wright brothers at 5 years old. It's not like my daughter.
There's also no internet back then.
Yeah, mine was in the 80s, and then our daughter that would have been like 07,
yeah,
08. But she's 1.5, so she's not reading, herbology and medicine books. So then now we get into this quantum realm, this energetic layer that permeates absolutely everything and is part of everything, from the most solid table to air. It's all energy in different states and different forms. So there's this underlying ambient energetic layer that's coursing through absolutely everything, including us, and it affects and is effective to every experience we have, from thought to physically hurting ourselves to expressions of love and pain and anguish and joy. It's all energy. And so if we look at it through that lens of quantum entanglement, quantum field theory, double slit experiments where two atoms can stay in connection even separated by distance, we get into these themes or realms of ideas of collective consciousness. And if once something is done, then that thing is accelerated. And the examples I use in the book are Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile barrier. And then all of a sudden there's this explosion of other people being able to do it because it became known.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, if I can do it then.
Yeah.
The other analogy I use is building pyramid structures across the globe. Again, barring any conspiracy theories or alien intervention, once it happens somewhere, it can happen everywhere. This is also seen in monkeys in the islands of Japan, where generationally, the monkeys would get food, and younger generations of the monkeys would start washing it off in water before they ate it, because the food would be dropped into the sand. So then the older monkeys didn't pick up the habit, but then the younger generations did. And not only did it spread to all the monkeys on the island to wash their food before you ate it, it spread to other groups and other monkey societies on different islands in Japan. So how does that happen? Once something is known, it's on the energetic grid, and then it can be built upon or accessed. And so that was one of the big, like, oh my gosh, especially when it happened with her. Mine I remembered as a funny anecdote from when I was young, but then having that come full circle in a different expression, but then be almost the exact same thing of where did she get that information? Where did she get this knowledge? She was connected. She was more strongly connected to source. She was more strongly connected to the energies of our world because we had not yet fully indoctrinated her into existing in the outer world.
Yeah. And dude, it's hilarious because, well, not hilarious, haha, but hilarious as in, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I also was raised Roman Catholic, and I'm kind of in that same mode right now. I've never, ever considered myself spiritual, or I'm more like Phil Hartman's, the caveman.
I'm just a caveman. Yeah.
And you realize I'm starting to question everything now. I question everything.
Yeah.
And of course, religion comes right into the crosshairs. And you realize, and especially from talking with or reading and listening to people who are pretty anti-established religion, it's their main goal 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, was to disconnect the humans from Earth and have them reconnect to something that they can actually begin to control it. And so being this spiritual, being out in the woods, being a druid or something like that, all of a sudden became a bad thing.
Right.
Whereas if you're not living by the dogma and the doctrine, then you're some kind of a freak. And throw 2,000 years of that mindset onto somebody. Of course, it's going to be as soon as your daughter is old enough, if you're a normal person, you're going to throw her right into Sunday school and just plug her right into that system.
And that's the, we've, to your point about questioning and about, asking, just not taking anything at face value, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And the challenge is, it's a macro and a micro issue, and we're stuck somewhere in the middle, where in some regards, we're not looking detailed enough. And in a lot of regards, we're looking way too detailed and not high level enough.
Yeah.
So if we look at religion, the main tenets of all major world religions are identical. Treat others how you want to be treated. Don't covet your neighbor. Don't steal. Don't be a jerk. Basically, don't be an a-hole.
Yeah.
Ryan, when she was little, she would play, had this little club game with her stuffed animals, and she had a 2-rule set for being in her club. And I think the entire world should adopt this. Her 2 rules when she was like 4 or 5 were be cool and don't be a fool. And those were the rules that she set for her to be in her club. I'm like, hey, your work's done. Punch the clock, because that's all we need right there. So the challenge with religion is that there have been messages of the word and messages of higher messages, let's say, higher functional messages, higher consciousness messages that have been coming on and in recent years, accelerating and being communicated in a lot of different ways. And so again, the book is just one of those avenues, one of those paths. But back in the day, it was Jesus. That was Jesus Christ. That was he was the main guy.
Yeah.
And if we look at Christianity, and we look at the assimilation and the adoption of pagan ritual and pagan practices, both looking at Easter eggs, Christmas trees, the time of year that we celebrate both of these things, it was done for a reason. It was done to kind of bridge the gap, saying, hey, no, we're cool over here. We're talking about some new stuff, but yeah, your stuff's cool too.
Yeah.
And then humans start to get more involved, and then scarcity, and then fear, and then ideas of the other. And then we get into taking the word, which is very, very pure and highly energetic, and adulterating it with control and with fear and guilt. I mean, the concept of sin. I think if we look back to ancient Aramaic, the translation of the word sin is actually basically just mistake, like an oopsie.
Yeah.
And we've aggrandized it into this massive thing, as opposed, again, all of this, human life is a practice. We're here practicing. Nobody is perfect. Nobody has all the tools or all the answers. Everybody's doing the best they can with the tools they have. So again, going back to your point about, I was born into a broken home or an alcoholic home or an abusive home. Every single person is doing the absolute best they can in every moment with the tools they have, but the tool sets are different. And so that's a major pillar of the themes of the book, where we get into the radicals. So radical honesty, radical acceptance, radical empathy, and radical balance. And if we can cultivate those things, one for ourselves, which is in some regards the hardest challenge,
Right.
that self-love, or that, or we don't beat ourselves up, or it's like, hey, you know what? Okay, yeah, I goofed, but now I know from that goof, so I can do something different in the future, instead of just the self-flagellation of, oh, I'm so guilty. Oh, I've done horrible things.
And the idea of fessing up to something is actually liberating.
And it's challenging,
so you're not beating yourself up, or just, it's that idea of this is going to be worse than I ever think it's going to be if I tell them that I screwed up, and then you do, and then you realize that,
one of the most liberating things that anybody can ever do is say, I don't know. We have this, we've come into this culture of almost paralysis if we don't know something. It's like, I think that's the best place to start. Let's just assume we don't know anything, and then go from there. Question everything, because that's where you start.
If you on your business card it says manager as a job, you're supposed,
Well, and now we're getting into those different levels of leadership. So are you leading from the title? Is that the only thing that gives you authority? Or is there an inner authority? Because you're on your own journey, and you're inviting other people on the journey with you in any capacity. It can be in business, it can be in finance, it can be in life. But that's really the cultivation of that leadership, one for ourselves, that being our own leader, being our own guru. And then expressing that in our outer world with kindness and empathy and acceptance and honesty and balance for absolutely everything and everyone. Because otherwise we're just enmeshed and we're addicted to the feedback we get from the systems we've created. Government, science, civilization, society. Nothing that exists that we feel is unchangeable would exist without us creating it. So anything we've created can be changed. But because can't change the financial system, that's the way it's always been. No, the financial system's been the way it's been since 1917, and the meeting on Jekyll Island with the Bilderbergers and all the major groups that created the Federal Reserve. So I think increasing that awareness and diving deep, but also being our own litmus for, okay, what resonates and what do I want to be aware of, and what doesn't resonate and what can I let go of? Because the underpinning of the book, and really the path to living that joyous and balanced and present and happy and abundant and expansive life, is releasing resistance to absolutely everything we experience in the world. And that doesn't mean releasing engagement. And that doesn't mean not being part of the world. But the world is a spectrum of contrast for us to experience. And so often we get stuck on one end of the spectrum, and the further out on the edge of the spectrum we are, the more resistance we're going to have to the things on the other end of the spectrum. Whether it's sports or financial, Bitcoin, US dollar, Samsung, Apple, I'm Christian, I'm Muslim. It's like, it's kind of at its distillation down or highest level, it's all the same thing. And we're just arguing semantics.
Exactly. And like you said, there's multiple, endless philosophies that you can engage with all this. And for me, it's Stoicism. And basically they say, essentially, take care of your own house and everything else. Don't worry about what's happening outside. You just deal with how you're interpreting all that. So that's wild, dude. All right, so let's get, and before, because I love this, it's radicalenlightenment.com. My guest today is Kevin Russell, who's the author of Radical Enlightenment, my guy on the 9th floor. So get back to, because I think this I think for me is interesting, because like I said earlier, I don't consider myself having been very sort of spiritual or kind of thinking outside the box and these sorts of things. What is it like for you to deal with your family who may still be, quote unquote, plugged into the matrix?
I love it. Oh man. Well, because once we get to a place of non-attachment to other people's ways of thinking or doing, it really opens up the playing field to be present and be the eye of the storm in any situation. And because I'm not sticking my head into the wall of the tornado. I'm just staying in my space. And that actually can be very threatening and make people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When you're just so good in your own body and in your own space that you call me a shithead, call me an a-hole, call me whatever. I'm like, okay, that's your perception. But your reality is not my reality, because we're all playing the first person video game.
Yeah.
And none of us have the collection of experiences and conditioning and programming and genetics and everything else that goes into creating an individual that anybody else does.
Right.
So for us to stand up and say, well, it has to be this way, or if you don't do this, then you are this, we're really cutting ourselves off at the knees collectively and individually from creating greater connections within society, within family, within neighborhoods, within interpersonal relationships, and also with our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
And with that energetic cord that connects us to the energy that is everything.
But isn't that part of nature, that that there is you're part of a tribe?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, like, chimpanzees in the wild will rip other groups apart if they come into their territory. So it's not like this is, what humans are doing to each other now is not a human construct. It feels like that's nature. However, what you're saying is you can still be a part of that tribe, but help me finish that sentence.
Well, let's take a more tightly knit human culture and look at that as an example. Within indigenous peoples or within native populations, traditionally, and we'll just take it from let's say like a plains tribe like the Cherokee. There are warriors, and there are shamans, and there are leaders, and there are workers, and there are women have roles and men have roles, and within all of these individual roles, there is functionality and there is cohesion.
All equally important, all equally relying on the other.
Exactly.
Think of
and it's interesting because we are. So my view is that we are energetic beings having a human experience. And so through that lens, some of us choose to go and have those war experiences, or choose to go and have those meditate in the forest for 8 years experiences, or choose to have those titans of industry experiences, or choose to have those bus driver experiences or janitor experiences. Whatever it is, there's again, it's that spectrum that we have available to us as modern humans, modern beings, to choose from.
Yeah.
So not everybody in the tribe is going to choose to go be a warrior. Not everybody in the tribe is going to choose to go, be the provider of, making the baskets and making the clothing and making the shelter.
Yeah.
But that, and again, that's part of that fulfillment so one thing, every single one of us is born with a natural talent, and it's varied. It can be a proclivity towards science or engineering or psychology and understanding other people, or architecture or building or whatever. And then we have interests that we cultivate in life. So if we blend and can find a match between our natural talents and our interests, to me, that's the recipe for a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
But again, we're born into these cultures and these families where it's like, no, I was a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. I went to Harvard, you're going to Harvard. I did this, I went into the military, you're going into the military. Yeah. But it's this perpetual generational thing of, well, why have we done that? Well, that's just the way I was raised, so that's the way you're being raised.
Right.
As opposed to stepping back and questioning and thinking, do I like the way I was raised? Did that really fulfill me?
Yeah.
Or was it the exact contrast I needed to make different decisions, and then I didn't make those decisions out of fear or guilt or whatever kind of conditional negative programming exists.
And on that thread, you almost, well, you definitely can't and you shouldn't blame the generation before you, i.e. your parents, because I think today's world with the internet, with as much information as close to you as possible. You can study this, you can go on forever. That never was the case 50 years ago. Right. So our parents are the products of their parents who knows? I mean, mine came from Europe in the early 1920s. So who knows what was going on over there? And just they come here and they just try to make the best of it. So you are a product of your environment as long as you want to be, I guess.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. As long as you're willing to.
There is balls and courage to say that and to step out of it.
Yeah. So, back to the original question, my parents were more receptive than I anticipated, which I was very grateful for. And now I think my dad may have listened to the audiobook, and my mom hasn't necessarily read it yet, but she's staying up on what I'm doing on social. So she's getting it by, kind of by proxy.
Right.
But then my aunt, my uncle, talking to my cousin, they could very well feel that the book is a product of the devil, and I'm having dark influences that have cultivated this thing. And again, nobody experienced what I did, so I can only talk from my experience, and then let the book speak for itself. One of the big tenets in the book that I have almost everywhere is take what you need, leave what you don't. Yeah. And so this isn't
ride, right?
Sorry?
Is that the rest of it? Enjoy the heck out of the experience or something like that?
Yeah, I didn't add that part, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, take what you need, leave what you don't, and enjoy the experience. Because if we're not enjoying the experience, then that's on us. Nobody else can change our experience in the world but us. Yeah. And so this is where I've always resonated with Stoicism, because it is that inner drive, that inner mechanism that is really required to pull us out of the matrix, to pull us, even though we're still in it, we're
you have to operate. You have
exactly.
To.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And in this society, that it's anything is an exchange of energy, whether it's barter, trade, or money. Money is just another form of energy. And since we went off the gold standard, the only reason that the US dollar has the strength that it does is belief. It's belief in the United States that has cultivated the strength of the US dollar. Yep. So if we're talking about energy, that's some badass, strong energy right there, because enough people are believing it to make it true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just like anything. That's like anything in life. What we give energy to, that's what we'll get. If we align with a positive, and if we go towards what makes us feel good inside, then we will experience more of that in our world. Yeah. So that's heaven and hell, purgatory, it's all right here and now. It's what we do in this life that creates these things in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, and this is why I really wanted to have you on. And I keep thinking about my next door neighbor, the shaman. Yeah. It's just, I'm at the point in my life where I've started thinking a ton about this. And, it was one of these things, one of the first interviews I did with a buddy of mine who was also an Iraqi veteran. One tour as a helicopter pilot, another tour on the ground. And he came back and he wrote a book about PTSD.
Yeah.
And I read that book after interviewing him. And then all that shit just started pouring out of me. And I was like, this is crazy. And so it's, but once the lid finally popped off, that was one of the more liberating, exhilarating, thank
cathartic.
God. Exactly. So now I can get on with the process of figuring out what that was all about. And honestly, it's what I found, again, as a knuckle dragger, what I found during this process is just if you at least understand what's going on, or kind of understand the reason why, or why did this happen? Why did you react like this? Just even that base level of understanding explains 90% of what you're feeling. That's actually been, personally, has been a really enlightening little ride. And so when I see friends of mine who I know that I had no idea that this was kind of what they're all about, I love talking to them about it. So what's your, I know in the newspaper article, you talked about writing more books and potentially some children's books. Talk a little bit about that. What's next?
Yeah. So in the cultivation, and if we have time, I definitely want to touch back on PTSD. I'm not sure if you got to that point in the book.
So here's the deal. We're at 55 right now. You got about 25 more minutes.
Cool.
So let's go for it, and then we can cut it off. For everybody out there, he's got a client that he's going to be talking to shortly after our talk, but we'll definitely have you on again to continue this. So the answer is no, I haven't gotten to that point.
No worries. So yeah, real quick. When I got the title and kind of the broad strokes of the first book, I got the ideas for 2 other books. So it's going to be a radical enlightenment series, basically. So this first one was my personal experience and the soup to nuts approach to elevating consciousness, connecting to your own expression of your higher self, and to living a more fulfilled or fulfilling life.
Right.
The next one is either it's going to be something about relationships and or parenting, because our children are good to go. They don't need our influence. They don't need our bullshit. They don't need us to keeping them safe and out of the street. Yes. Keeping them clothed and healthy and fed and loved and cared for, 100%. Majority of the rest of it, we can leave by the wayside. Yeah. I grew up surfing. If I had a kid that loved surfing, that would have been the best. It would have been this vehicle to get me to the beach more often. My daughter tolerates the beach. But I'm not going to force her to do something because it was my passion. It's my passion, not her passion.
Yeah. That's pretty enlightening, by the way. That takes a lot to do that.
It takes breaking with those generational mores and norms. Yeah. But just by opening ourselves up to, why am I doing this? Does this fulfill me? Does this satisfy me? Is this something that is elevating, or am I doing it just because? And if I'm doing it just because, there better be a damn good reason. Yeah. It better, like, I wear my seatbelt in a car just because. Well, yeah, because it helps keep me safe, and it's been proven to reduce fatalities in car wrecks. Yeah, that's a just because. I'm forcing my child to go to one thing or do this other thing. Why? Well, because that's what I did. That one doesn't so much hold water for me. Yeah. And then there's another one that right now is tentatively entitled Playing with God, because I feel like we have over-serioused religion way too much. None of this was supposed to be heavy. None of this was supposed to be don, don, don. This is all supposed to be enlivening, uplifting, and unifying. And because humans have gotten their hands on it, it's become divisive, it's become argumentative, and it's become deadly. Yeah. And so those are kind of the main themes. And then the couple children's books are actually, again, inspired from our daughter, Ryan. We had a couple interactions that I jotted down, I took notes on from when she was younger, that were just, they're going to be brilliant, just little, I mean, nothing too esoteric or deep, just really great snippets and using imagination and creativity to express ourselves in the world. Yeah. And so, yeah, those are still, I don't even know if they're on the back burner yet, but they're in the conception ether right now.
Gotcha. So what are you doing right now? So talk to me a little bit about the how you're working with clients right now with the whole energy change.
So basically still beating the drum on the book. The reception has been amazing, and it's broadening, but it's broadening slowly, because I wasn't one who ever cared about getting into the fray. I was very happy living my life, and I didn't care about clout or social following, or I had an Instagram account because I was posting a ton of sunset and nature shots and interesting architecture things that I liked. And so literally my whole, I've been late to the game as far as cultivating any kind of personal brand or thought leadership, just because I had a ton to say in design, but I wasn't interested because so many people are saying so many things. Right. Very similarly in this space, in the consciousness thought space, there's so many voices. Yeah. But
especially here in Encinitas.
Oh my gosh, San Diego, and then even more so the microcosm of Encinitas. Exactly. Yeah. But the connections I made and the approach that I came at it with, and the insight that I've gained from doing the subconscious and the energy work, it really put the puzzle for me together in a holistic way that I had never seen before. We have the consciousness side, we have the meditation, the mantra side, and the energy work is one that's still, it's the practices that Kelly has been trained in, and she's practicing professionally. I think they've been around for 10 or 20 years maybe. But it was the connection points, and then coming at it from science, from theology, from religion. So I've had feedback from people that it's been the most highlighted and noted book they've ever read. I've had people that they're on their third reading of it. So the impact is there, but the reach is part of the thing I'm still working on. And it's getting there. Yeah. And it's just one of those, you got to start, and then you take one step and then another step, and then who knows, like just like us reconnecting. You saw the article in the paper, and then here we are.
Yeah, exactly. So give me. So what would I call you up, I book a session with you. What is that? Give me the soup and nuts there.
So everything's energy, everything's connected. So if you're having physical ailments and it's unexplained, or there is a symptom without a root cause, which so many of our pharmaceuticals and medications are geared towards right now, there's an energetic component to it. If it's something where you've had an injury and that's a weak spot in your system, and it's this nagging kind of underlying pain, that is energy in your system communicating that there is dis-ease in the body, and it's going to the weak point, much like water always finds the lowest point. So in the session, it's either there's something that you are experiencing that you no longer want to experience, or there's something that you are going towards that you're feeling blocked towards achieving or towards getting. And so again, everything being energy, everything's connected. We can actually have subconscious negative messages that have been embedded since we were young, or even that we've absorbed ancestrally, that are running counter to our conscious desires. Yeah. The example I gave with the rampant allergies that have been running through my entire family, there are energetic components to that. Kelly worked with an individual who was basically on hospice. He was in his 30s or 40s, and he was down to 80 pounds, and they were preparing his family for saying goodbye. Yeah. She had 4 sessions with him in the hospital, and I think a week or 2 later he left. And now he's up to 140, he's a medium-sized guy, normal-sized guy.
Hey, real quick, stop right there. What did the hospital think of that?
They loved it.
Yeah.
But they said, you know what? We can't explain it, but he's healthy, so there you go. That's all that matters.
Because that is a great metaphor for what you're talking about. That is the system trying to fix something that, whatever, to a hammer, everything's a nail, like something like that. And then you bring in somebody from left field. Yeah. And it works.
Yeah. I had one session with a client. She has been utilizing cannabis pretty much 24/7 to mitigate the symptoms. Relationships with ex-husband, relationships with children were on the rocks. And she was kind of at that breaking point. And it was a 6-hour session. After that one session, she was off all of her anxiety medication, her blood pressure and heart rate normalized, and her kidneys, which were at 51% failure, recovered to full function.
Damn.
Everything is energy.
Yeah.
The only requirement that I demand that anybody that works with me, you have to be open, you have to be willing to change, because this is literally, and I'm not messing around with the name of the company or with the book. This is radical energy shift. Yeah. And the components that I look at there's a lot of different components. There's things called, you can have blockages, or like one term in one of the modalities Kelly uses is called a heart wall. So we can actually have this almost energetic calcification around our energetic core to keep us safe from our outer world. Yeah. And the byproduct does, it keeps us separate from others. It causes issues in relationship, and the list goes on and on. Yeah. So Crohn's, celiac, restless leg syndrome, angina, sciatica, all of these things are expressions of energetic dis-ease that are coming out symptomatically physically. Yeah. It can also be depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, disassociation. It can be thoughts about suicide. It can be, everything is energy, and those the mental can shift to physical and vice versa. Yeah. And so basically it's a very intensive energy clearing, and that's why I never use the term energy healing. I'm not healing anything. We are all completely whole as we are, as broken and dysfunctional as we are walking around.
Yeah.
We're still whole.
Right.
The challenge is all this programmatic subconscious BS and conditioning that we onboard because our subconscious is recording in real time everything we experience. And those become the programs through which we run our lives. And so it's really a dismantling of these negative programs, a clearing of this gunked up energy, and a release of all of these conditions and controls that we feel or that we've cultivated in our lives that have brought us to this breaking point.
Yeah.
I would love for clients to reach out to me before they reach the breaking point. But because we've been conditioned to basically a Western medicine approach, many times everything has been exhausted, and then people reach out.
Yeah.
So really just the only requirement is an opening, a willingness to change, and an openness to this method working. Because belief is a massive strength and energy. Belief can shift continents. Belief can crumble empires or elevate individuals.
Yeah.
And so we need to really cultivate more of that belief in ourselves in order to start shuttling and sloughing off all of these all this junk in the trunk, all these conditioned programs that we've assimilated just by proxy of living. It's not intentional. Just like anything we grew up with isn't intentional.
Yeah, and just as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about just my little journey here in the last couple of months. As scary as that ledge is, as soon as you take that step, it's amazing. And I actually have somebody who's very dear to me, kind of going through the same thing that I was for different reasons, but he's at that point where he's just freaking out.
Yeah.
And I just, I basically said, okay, you got to talk to somebody, an objective listener.
Yeah.
And he still hasn't, and I'm getting frustrated because he's making excuses for it. So I'm like, the cat's already out of the bag. You're not going to get the cat back in the bag. Yeah. Now's the time to step up and deal with it.
And PTSD is absolutely a major component of the work I do. So if it could be an inroad, pass my information along, and I'm more than happy to work with them.
Very cool.
Because
real quick, perfect time for this. www.radicalenlightenment.com. Kevin Russell. Continue.
Yeah. So on that note, every single human alive has PTSD, just by proxy of living. The expressions to which we experience it are going to be different because every single human's experience is different.
Yep.
One person's traumatic experience and life-threatening situation is another person's bee sting.
Yep.
It's not equal. So the analogy and the example I give in the book is from a deployment example because it's the most indelible and it's the most available for many people. So let's say we're deployed and we're in a squad and we're in the shit and we're pinned down, we're taking fire from multiple vectors, and we've radioed for backup, and now we're just fighting where we can. So our conscious mind is assessing the terrain, assessing where we see muzzle flashes. If we're the leader of the squad, we're directing our squad to where to set up, where to be, to find cover. We're consciously engaged. Our subconscious mind body is writing real-time programs of everything that's going on and storing it subconsciously. Fight or flight mode, adrenaline dump, adrenaline spike, cortisol dump. We're accessing our training programs. We're relying on that muscle memory.
Yeah.
Rescue comes, the entire squad makes it out amazingly. Our deployment ends, we're back stateside. We're in a Starbucks, back when we could be in a Starbucks for more than 5 minutes. We're sitting down. Absolutely anything can, and this is where you go into that movie Inside Out with that cartoon.
Yep.
Absolutely anything can trigger an energetic response. It can be a door slamming, a bulge under a shirt, a bulge on the ankle, a car backfiring. We happen to we get a glint of sunshine in our eye, and it takes us back to seeing a glint of sunshine on the mirror in the Humvee we were in.
Yep.
Nothing, it can be as everything is nothing. Absolutely nothing can be there consciously, and you still get dropped right back into it. So if we get into this and we have this conscious remembering, our system, our subconscious, like I said, monumentally powerful, stupid as hell, because it's quantum. There is no space-time for our subconscious. So situational awareness is the deficit for our subconscious mind. So if we're in an experience 5, 10, 1, 30 years later, and it somehow triggers the connection, our subconscious mind is going to serve up the program that was written in real time in the experience, which is fight or flight, heightened adrenaline, cortisol dump. You get the hair on the back of your neck standing up. You feel rage and anger and scarcity and fear for no reason.
Yeah.
That's your subconscious serving up the program that was written in real time. The problem is it's a program that's running in a context it was not intended for, outside of the use that it provided.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, our subconscious resonates that experience as the thing that kept us safe.
Yeah. Dude, so we're coming up on a hard stop here, but I'm definitely going to have you back on to talk about that. And the two things I'll leave with is after I read my buddy's book, and it's Dan Sheen is the author, and his book is called Continuing Actions. And it's, for anybody who's ever had PTSD, this was actually a great book that got me kind of started down my path.
Yeah.
And again, Kevin's got all sorts of things that he can do to help with that as well. Again, it's radicalenlightenment.com. But once I started actually talking to somebody, I bought a couple of books, and I believe the guy's last name is Levine or Levin.
Okay.
And it's about trauma. It's about how humans deal with trauma to get back to being a happy, healthy human. And in a lot of, again, like I said, just understanding just the base level of it was enough to be like, oh my God. And in it, he talks about animals, how an animal handles fight or flight, life and death.
Right.
And the idea being, if you somehow block the energy escaping, because when that happens, there's a shitload of energy that needs to escape. And if it doesn't, that's what gets stuffed down, and that's what causes the eventual eruption at some point. And so those books were awesome. And then the last thing I'll say, because you totally are bringing it up in my mind, is the Spartans, the 300, when the Spartans were going after the Persians in Thermopylae. Well, what they would do is the Spartans were a warrior class, and what they would do before they went into battle, they'd have a stick, they'd break it in half, put one half in a basket that stayed in the rear. They'd put the other half, kind of like a ID tag, right?
Yeah.
We're going to battle. So if the guy didn't come back, then he was still in the basket. But the guy that came back would take his other half, and the Spartans made this a part of battle. Was you come back, you grab your other half, and then you go off and do whatever it is you have to do to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And put yourself literally and figuratively back together again.
Absolutely. And like we have emotions for a reason. We have tear ducts for a reason.
Yeah.
We're here to experience absolutely every emotion.
Yeah.
But the part that we miss is we're also supposed to release resistance to everything as well. We got to let it go. And so often, especially in the West, actually globally, it's like, no, you be a man, suck it up. Or on the other side,
and don't cry.
Men don't cry. On the other side of the coin, why with feminine energy, why are you so emotional? Why has everything got to be such a big deal?
Yeah.
We're corralling and we're limiting. We're putting a governor on our capacity because we're not allowing ourselves to express emotion. We're not allowing ourselves to process energy. 100%.
It's amazing. And I'll one more, because it just popped into my head, and this is very apropos to what's going on in the world today with the whole argument of police brutality and all this shit. There's I forgot where it was, but I think it's on YouTube is where I saw it. But this was a cop who had his vest, his microphone on, his video on, and he's actually talking a guy down who's armed. It's a veteran, and he actually has a gun, and the vet is kind of like holding the gun up, and the cop is talking him off the ledge, eventually to the point where the guy drops the gun. They come in, they dissipate the stress of the situation. The guy still has his body cam or his body audio on. He goes off away from everybody else, and you can hear him just like hyperventilating and crying and just letting that emotional lid off, which is
That's
it's just
beautiful.
amazing. It really is. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So-
And honestly, leading with compassion and vulnerability are two of the most disarming tools and weapons that we can ever use across the board. If we lead with openness and compassion and vulnerability in a relationship argument with a partner, or even in situations like that, that's what connects us to our humanity. That's what connects us to each other. And that's what's so missing right now, is that we have become disconnected from technology, from practice, from the individualistic, within the United States, the individualistic approach of me. These things are working against our best interest from an individual standpoint, and also from a societal standpoint.
Yeah. All right, man. Hey, listen, we're definitely going to do another one, at least one more. And
Awesome.
I want the next one to start with going in depth with the PTSD, because that one's foremost in my head right now.
100%.
Let's do that. Let's do that as quickly as we can. So let's do this, because I know you got to run. I'm going to close it out by saying, if you're in the military, the police department, fire department, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. Kevin Russell, radicalenlightenment.com. Kev, great catching up with you, brother.
100%. It's been a pleasure, Brian. Looking forward to next time.
Look forward to doing it again. All right, guys, this is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmansTake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.